All right, everyone. Hello, welcome back to another coding tutorial video. In this coding tutorial, we are going to be showing you how to do Java conditionals or make decisions in your code as you are creating it. So, normal usual steps taken here. Going to go ahead and create a new Java class. This time I'm going to name it Conditionals so we know what it is and load that up. I'm going to quickly clean my screen up and I'm going to go ahead and write what we're doing. So um, this program is to show how to work with conditionals in Java. All right. So next we need to make sure that we have our main method. So type that in. All right. Oops, forgot my close. All right. Now we are ready to move forward. Now remember, your conditionals are used to check or make a decision. And typically it always starts off with your if statement. So we'll go ahead and put a variable here and we'll say int age equals and we'll put an age, right? And we're going to say variable to use in if statement. All right. Now, next we are going to create our if statement. And our if statement uses Boolean expressions. And basically that creates a condition that we can use. So, for example, we can have if, and then we're just going to go ahead and start our frame of our if statement. I'm going to add a comment here that says end of if statement, so we know where it ends. And then you see here with the if statement, your code must be indented in. So you see how it's tabbed over, it's not directly under the if. That's pretty much how you would work with these statements. So the only thing we're missing now is a condition. So we can say age is less than 21. All right. So now we have a valid condition. So that condition is going to either be true or false. Okay. So now, based on our age that we have here, if it's true, whatever we type in this area now will run. If it's false, nothing will happen. So in this case, we could say a print statement. And we can say this person is under 21 because we're saying if it's less than 21. So we have a simple if statement. Now from here, you can run and test your code. We're going to go ahead and do that. Run our file. And we see here that it says this person is under 21. So because our condition here was true, it was able to run. Now, in the case that were false, so we'll go ahead and change this to, let's say, 23. And if we were to save this and run it again, then you see it says build success, but there is no output. And this is why it is essential to have a else statement. Because basically what happened in our code is our code ran, but if the condition wasn't true, it basically ignores whatever's in there and continues on for the rest of the program. In our case, we didn't have anything for the program to run after the if statement, so that's why we don't see anything. And that is why it's important to have a else statement. So I'm going to delete this comment, and we're basically going to type else and curly braces. And I'm just going to add some space here so we can kind of see the gap between them. So actually, we'll go ahead and separate this into another section just so we can comment and you all can see how it works. So we'll go ahead and do another if statement. So let's create another variable. So we'll say int grade equals 80. All right. Now we are going to create our if else statement. And I'm just going to go ahead and change this back to 12 so we know that it runs if it's true. And I'm just going to add some space within our code. So now we're starting this if else statement. So we're going to go ahead and create our first if statement. So we can say if grade is equal to 100, for example, then we're going to say a print statement, and we're going to say you got 100%. Okay? Now, that is a simple if statement. And in this case, it's not going to run because our grade is equal to 80. So it's not going to show that portion of the if statement. However, since we changed our age back, you should see that, which you do here. But you see, we do not see the print statement here because this condition here is false. So your if statement body will only run if this is true. That's where our else comes into play. So when we say else, we can add another print statement and say system.out.print line, and we're going to say, sorry, you did not get a perfect score, right? So remember, our else is our fail all. It's basically going to show us something when our if statement is not true, if that is the case. That's not always the case, as we've seen. But if we go ahead and run this, then you'll see that now it says, sorry, you did not get a perfect score because our score was 80. It was not 100 for this to work or be true. So if I change this to 100, then you should see that this print statement here is going to run. So we'll go ahead and show that. And this is what it means to make decisions just based off of what you provide. And here you see it says you got 100%. So now I'm just going to swap this back, and that is an example of a if-else statement, right? Now, these if-else statements are basically using your comparison operators that we covered. So now we are going to get into using our logical operators and our else if statements. All right. So in this case, I want to make it more interactive to show you all what you can do. So what we're going to do is we're going to import our scanner. And another way you can do a scanner or import a scanner is simply by doing a asterisk. If I'm not, let me see. Yeah, so I didn't like that package. So it works that way, but let's see. Java.util. All right, there we go. It didn't like that we did it above our package. So if we do it this way, it's another way to import the scanner class and other classes in java.util. So basically this is going to allow you to work with any of those other classes in that Java util package that's not necessarily the scanner class, but that's just another trick I just wanted to show you while we are doing a tutorial. So now I have a way to work with a scanner, so I'm going to do that, and I'm going to do scanner input equals new scanner system.in. All right. We have a scanner to use to now collect some data. So let's say we want to ask the user something. So we're going to say, please enter your GPA in a 0.0 to 4.0 range. So our print statement is being specific for what we are looking for. And we're basically telling our user, hey, we need you to enter it this way. So that way we can pretty much guarantee that we're going to store it as a double. So then we do double. We say GPA is going to be equal to our input dot next double. All right. So now we are going to be storing the user's input. All right. So now that we have our user giving us information to make decisions, now we can create our if, else, if statement, which basically combines our if statement and our else if statements together. So first, we're going to do a base GPA. So we'll say if GPA is equal to 0, then we want to say a print statement, for example, system.out.print line, and then we will say you need to raise your GPA up now. Okay, that's one example. So we have our if statement. Now, after your if statement is where you can place as many else if statements as you would like. So all you would do is say else if and give it a condition. So in this case, we'll say else if GPA is, let's say, we'll put if GPA is greater than 0, right? Then we're going to print something out. Now, in this case, what I'm going to do is use the logical operator. So remember, that allows us to have two different expressions. And we're going to compare them. So in this case, remember that for your AND, both conditions have to be true for that to run. For your OR, only one has to be true. So in this case, we want only one to be true when we're checking our condition. So we'll put the OR by placing that symbol there. And then we're going to say GPA is equal to 0, right? We have that condition. Now, technically I have to use both, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to change this to and I'm just going to change my values to something else. N is less. So we'll say it is less than 1.5, like that. So we're saying if the GPA is greater than 0 and the GPA is less than a 1.5, system dot out dot print line your GPA is low. Okay, so now we have a else if statement that is now combining our comparison operators and our logical operators. So I'm going to add a little comment using comparison and logical operators. All right. And also another thing I want you all to know is technically you do not have to have your else or your else if statements combined like that. You can also add a space and it will be okay. Like if you do something like this, it will also be okay and work just fine as well. So no worries if you need spacing between your code. All right. Now, we have our else if statement. In this case, we can simply end it with an else and just say, for example, the GPA checker is having issues. All right, that's just going to be our fail all. All right, and so now we'll just go ahead and just do a simple test. So we're going to run. You see here it's waiting for us to enter a response. So we'll go ahead and put in a 1.2. And then you see here it says that your GPA is low, which means that it did access this line here, which means this was the first condition that was true in our if statement. So this one was false because our GPA we entered was a 1.2. So it basically immediately skipped this line of code and finds your next condition and it checks that. If it is true, it will run it. And that is what the case was for us. So again, if we were to run this and enter in a higher GPA, for example, so we come here, we enter in a higher GPA, we say 3.4, and you see, it says, sorry, the GPA checker is having issues. Basically, it went immediately to our fail all case because there were no conditions that were true. So again, another case we could do is adding another else if statement. So we could say, else if GPA is equal to, well, we'll say if GPA is greater than 3.5 or GPA is equal to, let's say, a 4, then we're going to do this. And I know technically in this case, both of them would be true if we put in something over, 3.5 or 4. So if we do a 4, technically both these conditions would be true and that's fine. So that's nothing to worry about. As long as one of the conditions is true, it'll still do what you need it to do. So we'll just go ahead in this one and say system.out.print line. You have a great GPA. Keep it up. All right. So you see there, we have two else if statements. And if we run this, again, you can have as many as you would like. But if we were to run this, it's going to ask us for a GPA. We'll say a 3.7. And it says you have a great GPA. Keep it up. Now, remember there was the case that you can have a nested if statement or a nested conditional. So in that case, that's what we will do here. So we'll say we want to have a nested conditional. And what we're going to do is say if the user enters a 4.0, then we're going to say they have a perfect GPA. So here we could say if user, or in this case, if GPA is equal to 4.0, then we want to do this. And we'll say system.out.print line, you have a perfect GPA. All right. So that's one. Now, the other case could be an else statement, right? And actually, for now, we'll just go ahead and keep it here. So you can just get the overall idea of a nested conditional. And we'll go ahead and run that. So to check this nested conditional, we want to make sure that we enter in a 4.0. And when we do, you see it says you have a perfect GPA. So it's basically printing out this one first because that one's true. And the next line of code in this if statement is the nested if statement. So we'll then check that one. If that one is true, it will print it out. If it is not, it wouldn't. So in this case, you could always add your fall case and say system.out.print line, keep working hard. You are almost to a 4.0. All right. And then that will be our fail case. So maybe our user has a 3.7. We still want them to have a secondary message coming out. So that's where our else would come into play. And we'll go ahead and test that here so you can see what I mean. And this is just showing you how you can have those different branches of decisions and having that decision tree continue on and on based on the needs that you are trying to check. So we're going to say that there's a 3.7 GPA, and then you see there now it says keep working hard. You're almost to a 4.0. All right. So overall, that is how you work with conditionals. That is how you make decisions in Java. Now, this could take some time to understand and figure out which way to do it, logical wise, what comparison operators to use, structural wise. So I do always recommend that when you start getting into deeper coding such as this, that you start to practice a little bit more and often, because some of these things can be tricky and you need to practice over and over again. So I highly suggest that you do this tutorial on your own to kind of understand it a little bit better, and then this should be able to help you moving forward to understand these decisions better and get a better grasp overall of how to work with conditionals. So to not keep this video too long, I briefly covered all the basics that you need to know for your conditionals, working with your comparison and your logical operators, as well as your nested conditionals. So hopefully this provides you everything you need to start your decision-making processes in your programs. So thank you for your time in watching this video, and I look forward to seeing you all in the next lecture.